Welcome to Storytime, Little Mead. We are starting a new story today. We're going to read Blob by David Walliams. Here we go. Would you like to meet the characters in the story? Well, here's Bob. Bob is a 10-year-old boy who lives in a tiny flat with his grandpa. Bob has been told he has a funny face. This is Grandpa. He has been told he has a funny face too. The old man loves his grandson very much, and all he wants is for Bob to be happy. Grandpa is very poor and wishes he had more money to treat his grandson to nice things like days out together. You see these three boys. Stumps. Stumps goes to the same school as Bob. He is a surprisingly short bully. Stubbs's gang has two other members, Gaz and Baz. It doesn't matter who is who because they are so thick, even they don't know. Miss Vere is the harassed headmistress at Grottington School where Bob is a pupil. There she is, there's Miss Vere. That's Bob's teacher, or head teacher. Just like a bit stressed. And now we're going to meet Winston. He's a kind old zookeeper at the local zoo. That's Winston. Winston has worked there at the zoo all his life and thinks of the animals as his friends. They think of him as their friend too, as he feeds them, cleans them, even clears up their droppings. And now, Sir Basil Basildon. It's a mouthful. Sir Basil Basildon. He's an incredibly grand owner of the zoo. He always wears a safari suit with a cravat. That's one of these fancy ties here, like a scarf around his neck. Sir Basil's zoo is home to animals of all shapes and sizes. There are many you might expect to see. Some of the most popular animals are the panda, the elephant, the tiger, the zebra, and of course, the penguins. But there are also many animals at Sir Basil's Zoo that you might not expect to see. Now this story is about one such animal. It's a fish with a funny face called a blobfish. And there on the front is our main character Bob, the boy who lives with his grandpa. And this is the fish the story mentions called a blobfish. So we've got Bob and Blob. And this is a map of the zoo, so you can see where all the animals live. I'll try and show you. Let's begin the story. Chapter 1. Funny face. Bob had a funny face. At least, that was what some of the other children at his school told him. Sometimes they used more hurtful words than funny. Sometimes they called Bob Blob. Bob was born with his funny face. He had lived with it for all of his 10 years. In fact, he came from a family of funny faces. His grandpa, who he lived with in the old man's tiny flat, had a funny face too. You could trace the funny faces back for generations. Bob's family tree. Okay, So you can see Bob here at the bottom, Bob's parents, and Bob's grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great and great-great-great. So that's his family, and if you look closely you can see they've got rather large noses. The boy knew his funny face made him stand out at school, and it often made him feel shy. Grandpa would tell his grandson, "Be proud of your funny face, young Bob. You come from a very long line of funny faces." But Bob didn't like his funny face one bit. Sometimes he thought having a funny face was the worst thing in the world. The boy's favourite place was the local zoo. Grandpa would take his beloved grandson there every year as a special treat on Bob's birthday. Together they would marvel at all the animals, and Grandpa would make up funny stories about how they got to look the way they did. Oh, well, the elephant has a trunk so she can tap other animals on the shoulder when she's lost and needs to ask for directions. Oh, the giraffe. Well, you see, the giraffe has a long neck as she's so very nosy and likes to look over garden walls. The orangutan grows his hair long because he's a big fan of rock music. He likes to headbang. Zebra. Well, you see, the zebra is black and white because he can't make decisions and didn't know what colour he wanted to be. Penguins are birds who can't fly themselves. They prefer to travel by aeroplane so they can enjoy the in-flight meal. The zoo was full of animals with funny faces, just like Bob's, so he always felt at home there. His grandpa had long been retired and barely had enough money to put food on the table, so the pair could only afford to visit the zoo just once a year. This year, however, when Grandpa emptied his piggy bank, it was bad news. "I'm sorry, Bob," said the old man, as he looked at the 3 tiny copper coins and 1 chipped button on the table. "I won't be able to take you to the zoo this year for your birthday." Bob hid his disappointment. He didn't want to see his grandpa sad. "Oh, that's okay. We can always go next year." "Yes, there's always next year," replied the old man as he avoided the boy's gaze. Bob loved his grandpa, but life could be hard because they had no money. All Bob's clothes were a size too small, his shoes were falling apart. So on the day of his 11th birthday, Bob took a detour on his walk home from school and headed to the zoo. There was a tall tree overlooking the grounds, and Bob climbed it. That way at least he could see the animal friends on his birthday, even if it was from a distance. The boy clung tightly to a branch and took in the view. He could see all the animals from up there. Looking down, Bob daydreamed he was piloting a propeller plane flying over the African savannah on a safari. In his dreams, he was swooping over a herd of magnificent beasts. "Oi!" came a voice. It broke the spell cast by the daydream. "Oi!" Bob looked down. A zookeeper was shouting up at him from the camel's enclosure, bucket and shovel in hand. The old man was standing next to a huge pile of steaming camel dung. The smell snaked up Bob's nostrils, and he steadied himself on the branch of the tree. "Oi! What are you doing up there, boy?" shouted the zookeeper. "I fell," lied the boy. The old man laughed. "Ha! You can't fall up a tree. Come on, boy. What are you really doing up there?" "Nothing," replied Bob. The boy didn't want to get into trouble for stealing a free look at the animals. He wasn't quite sure if that was a crime or not, but Bob hated getting into trouble. "You're all the way up a great tall tree, boy," said the man. "You must be doing something." "It's my birthday today, and I always come to the zoo on my birthday." "Happy birthday," said the zookeeper. "Oh, thank you. But this year Grandpa couldn't afford to take me, and I really, really wanted to see the animals because I love the animals." "So do I." "Come on down, boy," said the zookeeper. "I can let you in for free." "Are you sure?" Bob's eyes widened with excitement. "Yes, especially as it's your birthday." Bob shimmied down the tree. By the time he'd reached the ground, the zookeeper had appeared at the back gate of the zoo. He wore dungarees and a friendly smile. There was a whiff of animal dung about him, but that's hardly surprising considering his job. "So what's your name, young sir?" "Bob." "Mr. Bob. Well, welcome back to Sir Basil's zoo," said the keeper, opening the gate. The man had a quick look around to make sure nobody had spotted them. "Thank you so much for this, sir," said the boy. "Winston, call me Winston." "Oh, thank you, Winston." Remember we met Winston at the beginning, the zookeeper. We had a picture of him, didn't we, there? "Now come in, Mr. Bob, quick as you like. If the zoo owner spots us, we're both in trouble. As big as the biggest hippopotamus is dropping. And trust me, that is big." "I don't want you to get into any trouble," said Bob, a flash of worry crossing his face. "Oh, you won't if you're quick, Mr. Bob. It's a pleasure to meet someone who clearly loves animals as much as I do. Most of our little visitors run straight for the gift shop to buy a dinosaur pencil case, even though we don't even have any dinosaurs in the zoo. Now, what animals would you like to see today? Let me guess, the tiger? No? The penguins? No. The elephant? Nope. The zebra? Nope. The giraffe? No. The zookeeper looked befuddled. Everyone liked those animals best, especially the children. What then, Mr. Bob? I like the animals no one else likes. The ones with the funny faces. Good for you, Mr. Bob, exclaimed the zookeeper. I bet those would really like a visit. They so often get ignored. Now run along, Mr. Bob, before the owner, Sir Basil Basildon, spots you. Thank you so much, Winston. The boy ran off into the zoo, his heart pounding with excitement. Now, if you come back tomorrow to YouTube, the Little Me channel, I'll be reading you the next few chapters of Blob by David Walliams. Bye. Take care. See you tomorrow.